just do a soft start. There's still some people hovering outside that are slowly joining us, but let's be respectful of everybody's time. Claire and Alicia, thank you for being here. Thanks for coming, everybody. This is going to be a little bit of a different session because it's not all focused on how to sell more houses. We've got to work from the inside out. I can make room for you at the back.
I'm going to go right over here.
Oh, excellent.
In between these two, cozy right up.
So Claire's had a chance to chat with some of you. We're very excited to have her with us for the next 90 minutes or so. So I will leave the floor to you, Claire. Thank you for being here. Alicia, thank you for your support. And I'll let you do the intro.
Thank you, Irene. It's a real pleasure to be here. Some of you might be scratching your heads. I don't know how many of you are familiar. So my name is Claire Barrett. As I said, I've been living in Burlington for about 25 years. I'm originally from Montreal. I do practice real estate, though, out of the Hamilton office. And we'll talk a little bit about my history as it relates to uncovering your big why as we go through. I'm one of the top 3.5% agents in all of the RAV4 Hamilton Burlington, and yes, I do that by myself. And one of the things I've learned in my 4 years of transacting real estate is this is a career founded on mindset. How many people in the room have taken BOLD? Right, okay. So you've heard the BOLD law, be, do, have. All heard that one? You have to be the person that you need to be, to do the activities that you need to do, to have the things that you want to have in a life of abundance and control over that. So you go to BOLD and they teach you what to do. They teach you how to get on the phones, how to prospect. I am a machine when it comes to prospecting. I did a BOLD 100 every day of BOLD and for a month afterwards. I can do the job with the best of them. Exceptionally good at it.
There's a few people that might not know what
Sorry.
BOLD 100 is. I think everybody knows what BOLD is, right?
Sorry, my apologies. BOLD is founded on doing the activity that you need to do, which is primarily prospecting. A BOLD 100 is making 100 contacts in a day where you ask the question if somebody wants to buy, sell, or invest in real estate with you. So I will ask 100 people in a day that question. I did it 5 days a week, the entire BOLD, which runs 8 weeks, and then I did it for 4 weeks after that. Because as I was graduating, the BOLD teacher said, how you play in here is how you play out there. And I was like, boom, I need to do this outside of class. Not just for the class, for my business. That's the way I need to play. So I did it for another month. So I can do the best with the best of them. Okay? Except my business was going like this. How many of you heard that, real estate agents, we go up and then we go down, and then we go up and then we go down. And I wanted to build a business that was consistent. Who here would like a consistent business? Where you deposit the paycheck and you're like, yeah, I just deposited this amount of it. In Hamilton, I gotta tell you, it's like $8,000. Yeah, I just deposited $8,000. This is awesome. And then you get in the car and you're driving down the street and you're like, oh, when's the next one coming? And I didn't want to be that person anymore. So thanks to MAPS coaching and my coach, and I was introduced to neuro-linguistic programming. So I'm actually a certified neuro-linguistic programming coach. I also am supposed to be able to hypnotize you to get you to do things, not clucking like a duck or anything like that, don't worry. And mental and emotional release coach also. But the neuro-linguistic programming, for those of you who are not familiar, and I'm going to call it NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. For those who are not familiar, NLP is the foundation of understanding and altering our subconscious mind so that we don't need to create a habit. It is simply who we are. Think about that for a second. So my mother opens her mouth, I lose my temper. That's who I am, that's our dynamic, that's our relationship. That is a programmed response, whether I realize it or not. The power of being able to change that internal programming and remove those filters so that when my mother speaks, I take a breath. And without even actually thinking about it, on a subconscious level, I ask myself if she genuinely intends to upset me. And I'm able to let it go. That's very powerful.
That's a course in and of itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with the mother.
2 weeks, yes. I say it because it resonates with everybody, okay? But with your mindset, so remember how I said business goes like this, okay? So a huge epiphany for me. There's a lot more to NLP than what I'm going to teach you today. But this part of it really resonated with me because if you look at my resume, you can see it. I got my degree, started working for a trust company. I thought I was going to be CEO in a year. I really did. Thought I was brilliant. I was 21. What the heck did I know? I lived in a basement apartment in the beach, right? And then I got really frustrated that I wasn't. But I got really good at the job that I did. And then I got bored. My motivation left. And then I went to a brokerage firm, and I got really good at what I wanted to do. And then I got bored. Then I did this, and then I did this. So I've estimated I have about a 3-year cycle. And when I went through this process, I realized that my big why were checklists. They were not values. They were not about who I am. They were not about the be. They were about the do. And as soon as I could do the things, I didn't want to do it anymore. I'd done it. Did anybody ever have that? You get to like 90% of a goal, and all the poof just goes out of you, right? So I'm doing this course in neuro-linguistic programming, like I said, which is a far bigger thing. However, we talked about our aim, which is another word for goal, and a light bulb just went whoosh. And I was like, I have got to teach this. Because for me, it was life-changing. It made me look at it in a completely different way. Okay, so are we all ready to go?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so I have a few worksheets here for everybody. Okay, we might have to share. Alicia doesn't need one because it's pinned on my bulletin board. But if you guys can sort of pass these around, and I apologize, I'm overwhelmed at your attendance today.
You can always email me copies, Claire.
Why? You know, you just always think, you know, what if I have 2 people? It's kind of like having a birthday party. You just hope someone shows up. Okay, so we are going to how to uncover your big why, which is your aim. You're using neuro-linguistic programming. So we're going to talk a little bit, again, we talked a little bit about what neuro-linguistic programming is. We're going to break down the process, and then we're actually going to do an exercise that I did that the light bulb went off. Now, for some of you, a light bulb might go off. I have had people cry. But for some of you, it might be something that you need to take home in an environment that's a little bit quieter and calmer. Okay? So one other thing I just want to explain about neuro-linguistic programming, again, for those of you who have taken BOLD, you can probably say this to me. Your programming leads to your thoughts. Your thoughts lead to your feelings. Your feelings lead to your actions, and your actions lead to your results. Okay? So when we focus on developing habits, we focus on our actions. And we believe that through repeatedly doing those actions, we eventually will alter our programming. Now, there's validity to that. Anybody who's watched Chris Knighton, who's an agent out of my office, his 5 a.m. challenge, the man gets up in the morning, puts a nose strip on, videotapes himself at 4:30 every morning. And because he does it every morning, he is now a morning person. He wasn't before, but he is now, because he's made a habit of it. For me, that's pushing the boulder up the hill, right? Because you're doing something repeatedly in an effort to change who you are. Neuro-linguistic programming, it's pushing the boulder down the hill. So what if I can change your values that you simply find waking up at 4:30 in the morning is fun? Right off the bat. Now all of a sudden you're pushing the boulder down the hill. So this is the goal. Okay. So first of all, the 6 areas for goal setting. So whenever you're doing goal setting, you're using neuro-linguistic programming, all aspects, you're going to choose one of the 6, which is career, which will be our focus today. okay? Because we're gonna talk about your aim for your career. You can also do relationships, health and well-being, personal growth and development, family or spirituality, okay? Relationships tends to be a relationship with a significant other or a spouse. Those ones can get a little messy. Health and well-being, I want to lose weight. I psychologically want to be better. I want to be in a better mindset. I want to be in a better headspace. I want to handle and master my ADD. I want to help and master. I watched a lady do neuro-linguistic programming who couldn't be in a house with a cat and subsequently went through a process that took about 10 minutes and inhaled a bag of cat hair without a thing. I know it sounds kind of gross, but it's pretty cool. And actually, she was an agent who's actually she was one of the original agents interviewed for the Red Book. Right? So we're not talking like she wasn't a fly-by-night cookie baby. So, okay. So 6 areas for goal setting. So we're going to focus on career today. So turn the page. Steps to finding your aim. And again, remember, when I say your big why, you might say goal. We're going to call it aim, and we're going to talk about why that is. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to say what it is that you are developing your aim for. So it's usually about like a page narrative. Okay? My career. I like to do, for any of you who've done, people say to you, where do you want to be in your life 5 years from now? And I remember my rainmaker at the time suggesting to me that I actually write a narrative story, very descriptive. He's like, you walk down the stairs and you hear the whoosh of the car door open up as you step in, and the sun is shining because this is your summer house in California. Don't worry about the how at all. None of it. Let it go. And write a narrative of where you want to be. Holy cows. When you allow yourself unlimited creativity and where you want to be in your life, you will be shocked at what comes out. So you're going to write a what about your career? I said about a page. Don't ask yourself how you're going to do it. Don't ask yourself if it's possible. As far as I'm concerned, I am Gary Keller's next in line. Okay? I mean, other people have done it. Why can't I?
So where we see our life in 5 years,
Yeah, where you see your, not where you see your life.
professionally.
Where your life you want it to be.
Okay.
Where your life you want it to be. Who you want to be inside your career. Just let go of the how. Let it go. Okay? Then we're going to do the why. So, the why, this is the part where the neuro-linguistic programming comes in. Actually, let's go back to the what for a second. Let's talk about this idea of goal versus aim. And this was when the light bulb went off for me. So I'm standing here and I'm listening to this man, Dr. Matt James, who is the foremost person on neuro-linguistic programming. Now, for some of you who don't know, Tony Robbins is totally founded in neuro-linguistic programming. He's the one that everybody knows. All of our MAPS coaching is actually heavily founded in neuro-linguistic programming. And unbeknownst to me at the time, when I went to go and get my certification, which really was just for my own self-growth, there was 22, of the 110 people in the room, there were 22 of us from Keller Williams. Because to become a MAPS transformational course, this is the required class. We're all like, really, what? I had no idea, none whatsoever. So anyway, so Dr. Matt's up there and he's talking about this, and he, remember my 3-year cycle? I had goals. And every time I'd reach the goal, down I'd go. It would no longer engage me. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Anybody else experience that? Mm-hmm. Right? The novelty wears off. So for me, competency is absolutely critical. I am one of those people, I have to feel like the most competent person in the room. And then as soon as I feel like the most competent person in the room, I lose all motivation. Pretty scary. For those of you who don't know, I was on Mark Loeffler's team. I was his lead buyer agent for 2 years. I hadn't had my license a year before I sold an apartment building. The whole building. Yep, the whole building. because I wanted to show that I was competent. And that was the most complicated thing I could think of to sell. Right? And I literally walked into my one-on-one with Mark one day, and this is the funny, because this is the neuro-linguistic programming, and I want you to hear the difference. I walked into Mark one day, and I said, I didn't ask him a question. I looked at him and said, I'm going to sell an apartment building. What do I do? And there was in my gut, I had already done it. People ask me why I convert buyers at such a high level. I convert buyers at a redonkulously high level. I did 5 last week.
I've never seen it before, like the way it is.
Right? But it's because when I go into a buyer consult, they're already my client. And there is not an ounce or shred of doubt in my mind. My buyer consult, I'm already closing a property. Because that's who I am. Right? So going into Mark, I'm going to sell an apartment building, and I know in my gut that I'm already there, I've already done it. And that has to do with neuro-linguistic programming. Pushing the, now if you ask me to be a morning person, totally pushing the rock up the hill. I tried it. There's a great club called the 5 a.m.ers for Life. They're awesome. I lasted 3 weeks.
3 weeks, pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Oh, it's abysmal. But it was because, but that's just it. My mindset, my internal clock, the story I was telling myself was I was not a morning person attempting to do it. So yeah, I was pushing the rock up the hill. But going into Mark saying I'm going to sell an apartment building, there was not a shred of doubt. I sold one within 3 weeks. And then I went to him and I said, I want to sell something bigger. And I subsequently sold 21 units about a month later. And it just was not a shred of doubt. So, okay, so getting back to this. So Dr. Matt's up at the front. So remember our B do have, for those of you who haven't taken bold through MAPS, I don't know your MAPS, your bold laws. One of the most profound one is I want to be the person who's going to do the activities, who's going to give me the things in my life that I want to have. Okay? So we lead generate, we do the do. And it's because we want to get here, which is our goal. So a lot of us have vision boards. Our vision boards have pictures of airplanes. They have pictures of funky, wonderful islands. How many people here have a vision board? Okay. How many of you have images of who you want to be on your vision board? There we go. Because we put checklist items on our vision board. We do, and then we wonder why we can't maintain. We wonder why we can't maintain our motivation. So your have, that's your traditional goal. I want to do $500,000 in GCI, and I need to lead generate this much. And yet we never tackle the B. Who do I want to be? And this is your aim. So Dr. Matt's from Hawaii. Lives on an island called Kona. And back in the day before there was any sort of compasses or anything else, the local Hawaiians, the native Hawaiians, they could get in a canoe. This is my picture of a canoe. And I'm totally okay with the fact, the programming level, that I am not an artist. They would get in their canoe, they would point themselves at a specific star. Yes, I drew a sun, but it's okay. They'll point themselves at a specific star or a specific line of sight, and they know that so long as they paddle straight, even when the star is gone or the sun sets, they will end up at their goal. Okay? So they're going to do the paddling to have the dry land, but it's this that gives them the direction. And even though, but here's the thing, do they ever reach the sun? Do they ever reach the star? No. They don't. And that's what maintains their motivation. Because they're not striving for the land. They're not striving, I want a Tesla, I really want a Tesla. Okay? To me, the Tesla is like the epitome of like, I did it. But if I get the Tesla, I swear I'll like probably stop selling houses or something. But if I look at the value that that Tesla represents to me, and I strive for that instead, I will continue to be motivated above and beyond the Tesla. So this is your aim. You are never going to reach it. This is what you value most. And it is what you value at the deepest level, beyond the logic. Okay? Beyond the I want to be the most competent person in the room. Because I do. I'm competitive that way. But what I truly value, and I mentioned this to some of you earlier, is brilliance. That is critical for me. I cannot be somewhere where the energy is not brilliant. So I'm perpetually trying to create that in my life because I need to have that there. It is a cornerstone value for me. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions so far? I haven't scared you yet? No tissues yet? We're good?
Good.
Okay, so the B. So let's talk about the values elicitation. So again, vision board people, lovely. With your check mark items, I want to travel. I've done it. I want to travel. I love to travel. I want to travel. I want security for my children. I want to have a stable relationship. I'm really liking the kitchen. My kitchen counter is dark green. It's horrendous. You know, I'd like to do 500,000 in GCI this year. They are checklist items. So we're going to do this exercise to elicit your values. It's in your sheet here if you want, so you can do it on your own. But I'm actually, there's, believe it or not, NLP is entirely founded in scripts. So I'm going to go through the actual script with you, okay? So we're talking specifically about values. Your values at the deepest core of who you are. All right? So we are going to elicit your values. For those if you know the DISC profile, for those of you who are not familiar, it's a way of evaluating your intrinsic personality traits. For those of you who are a high C, compliance, dot your I's and cross your T's, you're going to have trouble doing this. I want you to take a deep breath and just let it go. There is no right or wrong way to do this. This is tapping into your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind will give you the answer if you don't know it. How many times do you say to somebody, so when do you think you're going to move? And they say, I'm not sure. And you say, well, if you were sure, would it be 2, 3, or 5 years from now? I understand that it might feel uncomfortable or you don't feel that you do know it. Somewhere inside you do. So just let go. Okay? All right, so standard elicitation. So we're talking about career. You start off with a simple question. What's important to you about your career? Really tough, right? And then you're going to dump out all the words that come into mind. Now for those of you who have the worksheet, you can do it on the worksheet that's at the back here. Although I find that that's not enough spaces for me. I'm quite verbal, in case you notice. Or you can just write it here. What's important to you about career? And I want you to write down everything that comes to mind. Take a few minutes to do that, okay? You know what I mean. Let it go. Just let it go. It's not a right or wrong. What's important to you about career? Dump every word that comes out in your head.
Do you mind going around those?
No, you can go right ahead. It's my office mates, old team. Don't tell Pam I have his pen. Okay? Don't worry, guys. There's like a lot of steps here. So you don't need to panic, it's not a test or anything. Now, the way to truly get, what do we do when we're talking to a buyer or seller and we're asking them a question? How deep do we go? 3 deep? 3 deep is usually the standard. So we're going to do this a total of 3 times. I'm going to ask you the question a total of 3 times. What is important to you about career? And you're going to dump the words again. And you will get repeat words, that's okay. When you get repeat words, you know you're getting to the bottom of the bucket. So what is important to you about career? And I want you to dump again. I use dump, it has negative connotations, but I want you to place the words on the page, please. Now try to remember, we don't want checklist items. If I were to write down Tesla, because I really want a Tesla, I would ask myself, what is important to me about a Tesla? Because we're actually trying to get to the undercurrent value. You guys do this all the time with your clients. Why do you want to sell your house? I want the most amount of money. They're all going to say it always comes down to money. I want the most amount of money. What's important to you about that money? If you really want your client to feel cared for, you're going to go 3 deep on that as well. Well, you know, I want the security. Well, I want to win. Well, I have a dream of financial freedom. It's different for everybody. Okay? So 3 deep. What's important to you about career?
What are you giggling about? What are you all giggling about?
Oh, because she's, I'm sitting here going, I'm drawing a blank.
Well, that allows you to get on your boat more often.
Okay, so what does getting on your boat represent for you?
Being outside, nature.
Nature? Well,
No
what's
traffic.
important about being out in
Freedom,
nature?
fun, family.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. So you like beauty?
Yeah.
There we go.
So,
Beauty.
about my career, beauty.
Doesn't matter. Right? I like brilliance, for heaven's sake. Whoever put the word brilliance with career? This is your values.
I do, I put that down.
These are
But
your
the other
values.
brilliance.
There is no right or wrong. There just isn't. And understand that any word that you use, you are using it as a label to represent your interpretation of that word. I heard a really great exercise once. I'm totally gonna get off topic a little bit. If I were to ask you all to write down 3 words when I say the word sex, not one of you will come up with the same 3 words. Not a one. It is a label. So brilliance for me means something totally different for you. Beauty for you means something totally different to me. And it's all right. You're the only person who needs to know. Okay? So, what is important to you about career? Now, if you're starting to get a lot of repeat words, don't worry, that's okay. You're probably at the end of your bucket. Okay, you're probably at the bottom of your bucket. But these are the things that genuinely count for you guys. This is why the Tesla is important to me. This is why more time on your boat is important to you. And these are the things that will motivate you until your deathbed, if you can tap into them. How powerful is that? It's huge. Which is why I was like, I have to teach this. Okay. So if you haven't had a chance to finish, don't panic. These sheets are for yours to take home. I will send you a soft copy if you like. Okay? Now we're going to go to what we refer to as the motivation. So that's just the standard, we call it standard elicitation. Now we're going to go to the motivation strategy. So we're going to talk about a time when you can remember. So can you remember a time when you were totally motivated in the context of your career? Now, for some of you, you might want to close your eyes and just think back to that. because your subconscious mind actually sees things in pictures. It will make it easier for you to elicit. So can you remember a time when you were totally motivated in the context of career? Can you remember a specific time? This is tough to do with a room full of people, but I can pick up on the body language and I can tell if somebody's got it or doesn't have it, okay? As you remember that time, what was the last thing you felt just before you were totally motivated?
Can I be further to another career because I just started?
Yeah, it's career. It's career. That's it. I was at home with my children for 10 years. That was my career. Again, it's a label. You choose what it is. Right? I ran the school council. I petitioned the school board. I didn't get paid for it, but that was my career. And that was my career. So don't, whatever it is you consider to be a career, it's your perception. So I want you to remember a time when you were totally motivated in the context of career. I want you to remember a specific time. As you remember that time, what was the last thing you felt just before you were totally motivated? Don't analyze it, don't think about it too hard, it will just come up. The feeling will actually surge through you. Okay? Can you give me the name of that feeling? Now, all feelings have charges to them. All people have charges to them. I am a highly charged person.
No, you're not. Get out of here.
My office mate the other day, he goes, I had no idea you were this intense. I'm a highly charged person, okay? So if you pick a word, if the first word that comes out to mind, you know, it's kind of falls flat a little bit in this question, then ask yourself what's important to you about that. So if, for instance, brilliance, I'd be like, well, I like brilliance. Not very heavily charged, right? So I'm going to, what's important about brilliance? I'm going to go, whoa, because I like happy states. I like being happy, right? So take it to a point where you get a word that you've got a pretty decent charge over. And you are literally going to keep asking yourselves these questions until you start to get repeat words. Yes, this is a script, it's a structure, it's a system. Okay? So again, can you remember a time when you were totally motivated in the context of career? Can you remember a specific time? As you remember that time, what was the last thing you felt just before you were totally motivated? Can you give me the name of that feeling? And if it's not got a charge, what's important to you about that? So that's the motivation strategy. So for me, total motivation, and I'll just use myself as an example, unless anybody here want to share what their feeling is? I mean,
I couldn't remember the specific time of the motivation, but the feeling was fear
fear.
before.
Okay. All right.
That's what.
Well, we're going to have a conversation about that because I'm that way too.
So I have one. In my early 20s, I was building houses in Vancouver, and I was the only woman on the crew,
Mhm.
and I loved it. So the word for me was that I felt stoked. Like I was just on fire. I just was so thrilled to be doing what I was doing.
Yeah. So I worked in apartment buildings, a very male-dominated part of the industry in Hamilton. So my work for a while was disruptor.
Love that word.
Loved being a disruptor. Still do kind of. Okay, but yeah. Anybody else? Yeah,
I fear, truth, and challenge.
there we go.
Disappointment.
So we're going to talk, as we get through this, we're going to talk about the challenge around those words. Okay? So I am a highly negatively charged person. I am motivated by the away from. God, I don't want to be incompetent. Oh my goodness, I don't want to be disliked. Oh, I'm a super high I as well. Okay, so I'm a DI. And Alicia will argue that I have a little bit of C in me, but I pretend like I don't. So DI, so I like, for me, like I like to be liked, I like to, but I also like to be very, very decisive. So for me, the fear of being incompetent is huge. But then, remember my peak? As soon as I got competent, because an away charge only gets you so far. Remember, your aim is not an away. Your aim is a to. And it's the difference being able to sustain your motivation and not, and I have trouble flipping pages, sorry. Right?
I always talk to sellers about, you don't get excited about leaving your home of 20, 30 years, you get excited about where you're going to.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so you do your motivation strategy and then you do your threshold values. And so last time I taught this, they're like, really? Okay, so how many of you have ever dealt with a seller and they're like, I have got to sell this house. I've got to sell it, I got to sell it right now. And then a price comes in and they're like, I'm not selling it at that. The heck are you talking about? They've hit a threshold. Okay? How many of you had buyers who were like, I absolutely, positively have not, I don't want to have to do any renovations. And then they go into a house and they're like, yeah, I'm not paying that much. Well, then you're going to have to do renovations. They've hit a threshold. And for some people, they just assume they can't correlate the amount of work with the price and just involve it, right? So we're going to go through a threshold elicitation because we want to make sure that we're touching on the person's threshold. They might very well have said for career, freedom and no fear and, okay, for me, acknowledgement. I love getting trophies. I love it. I do. So for some people, those all might really be big things, and yet, there might be something that goes against that they would give all that up for. So you're going to ask the questions, all these values being present, is there anything that could happen that could make you leave? So I have freedom, I have trophies. It's actually acknowledgement and approval, okay? Because what do they represent? For me, they represent approval and a level of competency. I have all these things, and yet I would still leave. This was a huge aha for me, because I discovered I will leave the most amazing situation on earth where I'm making gobs and gobs and gobs of money if the environment is not a brilliant, happy environment. That is my threshold, and I did not know that it was. Okay? So all these values being present, is there anything that can happen that can make you leave? And you're going to jot that value down. And then you're going to push the boundaries of your values on the other side. All these values being present, plus the one that you just said would make you leave, what would have to happen that would make you stay? So I'm making gobs of money, I have my Tesla, and I have all my acknowledgement. Again, I'm talking in checklist items, but the values that underneath them, right? I have all these things, and yet I'm in an environment that is not in keeping with my value of happy brilliance. And yet I stay anyway. What is keeping me? Fear. Sometimes.
Knowing you aim? Oh, wow,
Maybe.
aim should stay this
Well,
same,
for
I
me,
guess.
honestly, it's complacency. I've stayed places before and I look back and it was because, you know what, it was just gonna, at the time, it was gonna be too much work to leave. My husband's been working for Royal Bank for 37 years. Right? So what do you think his value is? His threshold value is stability. Huge, he's a huge S personality. Massive. So, yeah. All right, so you're going to challenge the other side, and then you're going to keep challenging each side of the threshold until you get repeat words. And this is how you elicit your values. And then you're going to write them all down in a list. You have them all down in a jumbly list on your piece of paper. It just looks like a mishmash. For you high Ds, I have a really, so when I get a system in my head that like a hole I need to plug, I literally have like a big sketch pad and I literally vomit the idea out. It's not pretty. There's words just everywhere. And then I hand it to dear sweet Alicia and I go, make this happen. Right? And she looks at me going, I can't read those chicken scratchings. I don't know what that is. But that's how I do it. And this is a very similar process. You're just going to get those words out. You're not going to think about the how. You're not going to think about whether it's right. You're just going to let it go. Scared ya? Then you're going to write them out in an orderly fashion. Okay? So you're going to say to yourself, of the above values, which is the most important to you? And that's number 1. Now, does anybody want to share their words just as an example? I can't hear you.
I haven't even got the words, let alone share it.
I'll use Alicia, and then I might have to, I don't know.
So my words for leading and my words for staying?
Nope, right from the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Right from the beginning. We won't do all of them, but what's the number 1 most important word that you put down on the paper as it relates to career? When you look through them, what is the most important? We'll just pick 5, don't worry.
Predictable.
Predictable. Is that your number 1 word?
There was
Because I was going to say, you're in the wrong industry.
I was on a couple of those, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
I
fine.
didn't go back
That's
and
fine.
check
But
them.
which one is the word that is the most important to you? Okay, so let's do me, because I can remember mine. And this will also lead into this whole charge thing. So, not competent.
Prosperity.
So prosperity. So for the other, well, we're going to do me, because I don't mind if you guys pick me first. So being not competent, right? Like we're competent, being competent. Okay? What's the other word I had? Part of something. Yeah. Okay? Belonging, yeah. Freedom. Which is ironic because I have less time for myself than I ever did, but it's my choice.
Fun.
And it's
Freedom of
flexible.
choice,
So for autonomy is huge for me. Autonomy.
That's the word. Independent.
Actually, sorry, part of something actually for me, that wasn't the word I used, it was acceptance. And, yes, for me, it was also, I love getting a trophy. If you come in my office, I have like stuff all over the place, and Cam's like, man, holy cow, and I'm like, yeah, I know, it's all gonna be up there for me. So, so for me, it was acknowledgement. Okay, and this is how I rank them. So you keep going, you keep asking yourself the question until you go through them all and you rank them. Right, so the script is of the above values, which is the most important to you? Assuming you have the list of values that you have, and this one's chosen, what is more important to you? You just keep going through until all the words are ranked, and they're in their level of importance. Now this was an eye-opener for me. We're not going to get into it, but there's an aspect of neuro-linguistic programming which is called mental and emotional release. So I have a recording, it takes me a whopping 12 minutes every morning, and every morning I let go of the 5 most destructive, negative feelings that you can have. Every morning I do it. It takes me 12 minutes.
Do you have a visualization?
Anger, fear. No, so it's actually, there's actually a script for it. So you can see your timeline, you elicit your timeline, is in front of you or is it across in front of you? You float up over your timeline, you float to a time and you've elicited what age you were when that program was ingrained in you. It always has to be younger than 7. It can be in the womb, it can be in a previous life. I've never had a previous life thing, but anyway. And you go out to that time and you stand over that time looking down at that time, and then you turn around and you look at that time from behind it and above it, but looking forward into the future. And I know it sounds really hokey, except remember your subconscious mind thinks in pictures, and your subconscious mind cannot process something in the past while looking into the future, and it literally lets it go.
Just
Can you, do you have more
I know, it's
information?
really tough.
this is important.
Just
Jim.
that last sentence. You can't,
You cannot be above something in the past and look towards the future and reconcile the visuals with the feelings, so your subconscious mind lets go of the feelings.
All right, want more information on that, totally.
You need to read this book.
Okay,
Mental and Emotional Release by Dr. Matt James and Tris Thorpe. Tris Thorpe teaches at the Chopra Center in California.
throw up.
T-H-O-R-P.
The author was,
Dr. Matt James, who's
Matt
the one
James.
that taught me how to do mental and emotional release.
cool.
And so I listened to this tape. Again, I'm a supercharged
Exactly what I'm
person.
looking for.
So it's great, because you get all the warm and fuzzy when I'm up here, like I'm happy. However, I also feel the negative even more charged. So I'm doing this values elicitation, and Dr. Matt stands up there and he goes, okay, I want you to calibrate to a total of 100% how much of the charge is away from and how much of the charge is towards. So for me, it's not that being competent is good. I was 90% charged from not being perceived as incompetent. I was highly away from. Is that making sense to anybody?
Totally.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm totally away from.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm
Totally
away from as well.
And it's really funny because I literally walk around trying to create brilliance in my life, and yet internally, I'm very negative because my charge is negative. So I go through this mental and emotional release, and all of a sudden, everything is congruent because I'm letting go of that negative charge. Is that making sense?
Is it a positive, negative thing, like, you know, being attracted to something that?
It's totally away from and towards. If you're looking at your aim, are you ever gonna get to the land using this as your landmark if you're paddling backwards?
Well, technically,
Seriously?
no, but.
Well, you might eventually, but I think you'd be really old.
If you
It would certainly be a heck of a lot more work, right?
Yeah.
So if you can release all that negative energy, all that negative charge, now all of a sudden it's very different. And please understand, right? So remember, your programming leads to your thoughts, leads to your reactions, or sorry, leads to your, okay, programming, can't write it upside down. Thoughts, feelings, actions, reactions, right? Okay? That's a key. All right? So your programming leads to your thoughts, leads to your feelings, leads to your actions, leads to your reaction. Here's the thing. If your programming is negatively charged, it is not in alignment with any of this. None of it. And now you're not just pushing the boulder up the hill, now you're pushing the boulder up the hill and there are wildebeest like stampeding down the hill at you. And for what it's worth, it's exhausting, guys.
Yep.
How many of you have been like, oh my God, I just lost 20 pounds, this is absolutely awesome, and then you get home and you're like, oh, this is so tiring. Oh, I don't know how long I can sustain this. 4:30 in the morning, that was me. Because I was not a morning person. My programming was not aligned with the rest of it. I'm thinking that I'm going to do this and I'm following through with my feelings and I'm feeling really pumped about becoming a morning person, and my alarm clock is going off 5 times at 4:30 o'clock in the morning, and I'm actually doing what I need to do, but at the end of the day I have no juice left. Peter Pacetto, if you've ever had him as a bold coach, he said something very profound, and Alicia and I use it all the time. It's part of our core values of our team. You cannot control your first thought. You can control your second and third. So again, hot temper lady, I really like, somebody annoys me and I just want to, but I've trained myself to control my first thought. Neuro-linguistic programming changes your first thought. So you don't have to fight it. I swear it's really powerful. Okay, so the mental and emotional release aspect, you go pulling up your value solicitation. So if you are very heavily away from, okay, there is a certain reality to that, because you are going to get to a certain level of achieving those values and you're going to lose your charge. If I am far enough away from the lion, I'm not so concerned he's going to bite me. Right? So I might not run so fast. How many, so I used to say a terrible lie. I think about it now after learning it. You know, you talk to the elderly lady and she's like, you know, I can stay in my house. I don't need to move yet so long as I can handle the stairs. And I used to say the most abysmal thing to them. I used to say, yes, but what happens when you can't? Do you think I'm motivating her to move? No, I'm motivating her to get the heck off the phone. Because it's an away from charge. If you truly want to motivate them, you said it, so now I use very similar to what you said. I totally appreciate what you're saying. I mean, I felt that way myself. What I found though is if we find the perfect place for you to go, you no longer have to worry about when that's going to be. And you're still going to maintain this wonderful home somewhere else. Does that sound like a good plan? Wow. And if I'm able, if I've elicited her values in the process, I've dug 3 deep, and I know for her stability and making it easy is really important, I use those words back at her and I'm reinforcing that. Okay, so for those of you who have big away from charges, take a look at letting go of some of that. Okay?
Do you mind if I touch back on what you were saying? It keeps on running through my mind and I can't quite figure it out, so maybe I've misunderstood. But you talked about trying to become a morning person and get up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And I get that not everything's going to be a fit for us, right? But what
Yeah, okay.
please feel free to clarify.
You can do anything you want.
Oh, I believe that I can.
You can.
So I'm just
Absolutely you
wondering,
can.
so what do we do with that information in terms of, I want to be healthier, I want to be more focused, I want to be more productive in terms of my work. You know, where,
So there's again, we're touching on like a tiny little aspect of neuro-linguistic programming. I strongly recommend, like if any of you are interested, there's some great literature out there. There are some great practitioners as well in the city. So a perfect example is, again, I'm gonna use Dr. Matt as an example. I hope he sees this. So Dr. Matt, you said, you know, he says, I was clinically obese. I was clinically obese. So his internal programming was exercise sucks. He'd think exercise and he'd think suck. Vision boards aren't about the things on it, right? So I lost a lot of weight recently. Not that you can tell at the moment, but anyway, I did. And what it was I realized that when I picture myself in my head, I picture myself overweight. So if I want to create an environment where I believe I'm anything other than overweight, I need to change that picture. So if you want to create an environment where you are a morning person, what you do is there's a way of actually embedding a value in there. So Dr. Matt wanted to lose weight, so he changed his programming. No different than my mother is good, opens her mouth and I'm gonna argue.
I totally get that.
Right?
So
So you change your programming that you see food and you feel happy that you don't eat it.
right.
So Dr. Matt changed exercise and he embedded the value of fun in there. And all of a sudden exercise became fun. He changed the programming at a subconscious level.
And so you getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4:30
I
in
just
the
didn't
morning?
do it. It wasn't important enough to me. I
Got
haven't
it.
done the work.
Thank you. Okay, understand.
No, I haven't done the work.
So sometimes
I can't-
sometimes things just aren't going to be important enough
Yeah,
to us
it's
to
not
actually
important enough to
overcome
me.
them. Got
And
it.
then you should just let it go and say, that's who I am.
Or maybe well no, I can be whoever I want.
No, that's what I mean.
This is not my priority right now.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
important enough to
it's not important enough to me right now.
We
But
may
that's a
never be.
personal choice.
That's an important point.
That's a personal choice that I've made. You have to own your choices.
Yeah.
My son got caught skipping his first class yesterday, ever, in grade 12.
Whoa,
Right.
first ever in grade 12?
My 3 children, this is the first time any of my kids have ever skipped a
Congrats.
class. I'm a scary mom,
Got caught.
super scary mom. And I'm sitting there and he goes, I just don't need this, I don't need this lecture. Like it was a short day in the class and my friends and whatever else. And I go, listen buddy, I skip class, don't skip class. I said, here's the thing. You made the choice. You had to know the consequence was going to be a lecture for me. I don't know why you're surprised. Stop fighting and just go with it. Own your choices, people. It's imperative. Okay? Okay, so we do the standard elicitation, we do the motivational elicitation strategies, and then we do the threshold values. You rank everything. Please, by all means, this is going to be a far more effective exercise if you acknowledge when your charges are away from and towards, and you find ways to release the away froms as much as possible. So it's a 12-minute script. I listen to it every morning because I am a heavily away from charged person. And for those of you who are doubting what I say, when I did the first weekend in Toronto, so again, when I lose weight, I have a McFlurry addiction. Wholeheartedly, I have a McFlurry addiction. Okay? I could not drive past McDonald's where I did not stop to get a McFlurry, like 3 times a week. So Dr. John pulls me up on stage and he does something called a swish pattern, and it's entirely picture-based. And I'm telling you this because this was me, and you can quiz me, okay? Like, this is totally legitimate. So he did this picture swish pattern. So I hate liver. I literally want to get it. It's just disgusting. Ugh, it's gross. So he elicited the picture of the McFlurry, and he picked up the modalities, how I see a McFlurry in my head. And then he elicited a picture of liver and how I see it in my head. And the sub-modalities are a little bit different. So all he did then was he transferred in my head, it took 5 minutes, the submodalities of the liver, and he applied it to the McFlurry. So first of all, unbeknownst to me, they got the kitchen to like pseudo jerry-rig a McFlurry, and they brought it up in front of a crowd of 100 people, and I started gagging. I was like, get it away from me.
Nice.
And it has now been 2 years, and I've still not had a McFlurry. Yep. I stopped my brother from biting his nails. He was a little more resistant, but he didn't bite his nails for 6 months. He's been biting his nails since he's 2. Just did a pattern. If I have a buyer, have you ever gone into a place with a buyer and you're like, this is the house. Oh my God, you know this is it, right? And you can see it in their faces. They are terrified. Terrified. A huge away from charge. I'll tell you what I do. And you need to understand, neuro-linguistic programming is not something you do to people, it's something you do with them. You cannot elicit something that isn't already internally in them. I cannot make you cluck like a chicken. I can't, I've tried. So many times. So I'll say to a buyer, I said, okay, you know what? This is my favorite objection handler, feel, felt, found. I totally appreciate how you feel. In fact, I found myself feeling that way too. I remember buying my first car, just knots in my stomach. This is what I found. Close your eyes a moment. I'll say to them, I want you to imagine yourself in your new home. You've been there a year, your feet are up, kids are playing, giggling in the background, dogs at your feet. And based on the values I've listed in the buyer consult, you are feeling complete peace in your home. Is this the house that you're in? All fear goes. All the negative emotions just let go. And they're able to let it go. And sometimes they say, no, nope, this is not it. Because in my picture, there is not green walls. Okay, this is not it. This is their subconscious mind telling them it's not that house. And I'm not in there to put them in a house that they don't want to be in and they're not going to be happy and refer all their friends and family to me. Right? So your subconscious mind, it truly, genuinely does think in pictures. So when you're going through and you're looking at the charge, look at the pictures. And this was my big thing. So when I switched my charges from away from to towards, my beginning charge was a ball with 6 tornadoes going in multiple directions. That was my charge. That's what it looked like. That was the visual for me. That's how intense my away from feelings were. So I did a mental and emotional release multiple times, and all of a sudden, that's when the sunshine came out. And I was like, brilliance, that's it. And now all of a sudden, my aim, my B, that's my continued motivation. I no longer have that 3-year cycle. Because I'm no longer running away from the 6 tornadoes held in the ball, like barely at bay. Does that make sense to you guys? We all on board? Okay. Now when you do your values elicitation, it might not be really obvious. You might not have a sunshine that pops in your head, but you will see a pattern in the words. You will see a pattern in the words. You'll see that it's, you know, either your charge is towards something that's light, that's free. What does that mean for you and everything else? But keep at it, you'll get it. Okay? So okay, so it's great. So now I know that my goal is brilliance. Okay? What do I do with that? At first I looked at the girl who was working with me, I'm like, I'm gonna get a tattoo of a sun. That's great. Okay? And I would be lying if I told you that I live every day like this. I have to be reminded. Last week was messy. And I was going back towards that negative charge again. I had to listen to my recording a little more often, and I had to remind myself of what my B is. Okay? So you're gonna write goals. Again, this is typical of anybody who's done any sort of mindset or business planning or anything. Goals need to be specific and simple. They need to be measurable and meaningful. You need to write them out as if it's now achievable and in all areas of your life. I know we're eliciting values for career, except we would be lying to ourselves if we didn't think that the other 5 parts of our lives were intertwined. If I want to make $500,000 in GCI this year, because that tells me that's my standard, that shows me that I'm competent to feed my competency value, but I'm going to get divorced in the process, probably not a good idea. Okay? Realistic and responsible, so ecological. I don't mean green grass. I mean ecological for the environment that's around. Okay, there's no point in me being happy if it comes at a price to everybody else, because it will come back. Timed and toward what you want. So in our team, I'll actually show it to you. I'm going to sneak something underneath here. So I came back. My course was in California. Oh, Sugar Shack. What did I do with it?
Over here? This?
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Sorry, we have to make
Oh,
one.
that's it. No, it's okay. I told you. I go around with a
spread.
small bus of little cool things. So, so how many of you heard, if you take one action towards a goal within 24 hours of setting that goal, you're 76% more likely to achieve that goal? So I'm on the plane coming back from Carlsbad, California. I'm like, what's the one thing that I can do today that is going to make my brilliance come to fruition? So I came back, I sat down with Alicia. We need a culture code. That was it.
A culture code.
Culture code. So this is our, Alicia made this, by the way, all props to her. I spewed out ideas onto a big page and I handed it over and I said, please make this. So this is our business plan / so for me, we're at the infancy of building a team. For us, for me, and for Alicia, we are congruent in this. Culture is it. So when I joined Mark's team, right, it was GCI. All teams have different value propositions. So for me, it was culture code, because that was congruent with who I was. As a leader, that's who I want to be. That's what I want to provide for the people. So our culture code, so we came back, relationships over transactions, be the best version of yourself, always be growing, embrace change, always put our clients first, the relationship is the experience, and it goes on. That's my culture code. So that was the one activity I did. So that was my first SMART goal. Because knowing all this stuff only counts if you apply it. Right?
It's like having a strategy and then you choose the
Right.
tactics.
Okay, so me being a morning person, I have the tools to do it. I have the tools to do whatever I want. Just set my alarm. You know, what do I expect? So, okay, so you're gonna do your SMART goals, and then you're gonna do your action plan. Now, if we come back again, let's come back to, how many of you use the Keller Williams 411? Biggest lesson I ever learned about those systems and models is if you write it in your 411, it really should kind of be in your calendar.
It's a
Right?
setting action.
I'm gonna lead generate 10 hours a week. I'm gonna follow up for 5 hours. and it's not in your calendar. I'm gonna read a book. Where is it? In your calendar. If it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. So this is the rowing. You're not gonna drift there, folks. So put in a step-by-step action plan. Here's another thing that I learned though, especially for those of us who are away from charges. As you dissipate that charge, always celebrate when you get to 90%. Have your goals overlap. So if in the first quarter you want to achieve a certain level of growth, you need to have them overlap, right? So goal 1 is here. If goal 2 doesn't start till here, you're toast, because you're gonna hit that 90% mark and you're gonna lose all your puff because you're gonna be really close. Do it here. They should go like this. Because that's an up and down, and that is not. Celebrate at 90 and start the next one. Okay? Now that doesn't mean, that means you can't shortchange your goals. Make them big. Make them big. Don't think with boundaries. So that's SMART goals. Any questions about that? Tons of, ooh, okay, this is the fastest I've ever done it. So good. So, okay, so here's a tough one. Flexibility on the path. To some extent, we set our goals in a way that we're either, no, you're fine. Thank you for coming. We set our goals in a way that if we are not going to get there, we feel like we're failures. Not very motivating, is it? So you have to have a certain amount of flexibility. Here's the thing. If you want to create freedom in your life, to create a beautiful life, may I use your example? Is that okay? If you want to create okay, so I'll use mine. Brilliance. So I want to make enough money that my stress level, my negative charge goes down, so I can radiate a positive life in a positive environment and create that in my life, right? But and this month has been a challenging month in the market, so I'm a little bit behind on my goals. Do I give up on it? No. So, but the aim is radiance and brilliance. You can't lose sight of the fact that you're still going towards it. Maybe your paddle's not getting you there as efficiently as you thought. Maybe you need to change paddles and everything else, but the goal is still to move towards that horizon.
Maybe your stroke just needs to be adjusted.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. So I'm a cold caller, hands down. I love it. I didn't used to. I changed my programming. I can sit on the phone for 4 hours straight. It's all good. You can swear at me down the phone. I don't care. Don't care. And you know how I got around it? I exude brilliance on the phone. You talk to me when I'm cold calling and I sound like I'm high. I truly do. I trained myself. I play Kings of League on a day where I'm feeling really blucky. I have a trigger. Okay? You know Pavlov's dog, you ever heard that science? The doctor would ring the bell and feed the dog, and ring the bell and feed the dog, and eventually the doctor would just ring the bell and the dog would salivate. Okay? So I, every day, would play Kings of Leon in my car really loud on my way to work. And I would sing really loud. And then I would walk in the door and I'd be like, it's on. One of the agents in my office, who I will not name her, whenever she goes into a listing presentation, she does a power stance. Because it's her trigger that now's the time to bring it. And she's trained herself for that. NLP does something called anchors. So you create a ring of power and you touch a knuckle that you've trained, that when that knuckle gets touched, you feel empowered. It elicits all the feelings in your life where you felt the most powerful. So you're gonna go into a listing presentation and you're gonna trigger it. And you're gonna go, stand up a little taller, and in you go, and you exude that energy. So flexibility on the path has to do with the fact that even though you're not maybe on the right direction, it's an acknowledgement that you're just a little bit off course, and that's it. And you just need to adjust a little. Okay, so you truly need to be flexible along the path. Sorry, any questions about that? We're good? I haven't like totally blown your mind out yet? Actually, there's something in here that, when we talk, I want to go back to the charge for a second, away from, and I just want to read some words to you. They're counterbalance. Victim, understanding. Hurt and rejection, self-acceptance. Guilt and unworthiness, forgiveness. Unfulfilled expectations, totally go with the flow. Control, peace, faith, and trust. Roles and duties, commitment. Social expectations, let go and be a leader. Now, each of those pairings are a different side of the same coin. How quickly does it take somebody to anger you? Seriously, anybody? How quickly do you get angry?
Depends on
Quickly.
But how quickly can you get angry?
Very.
Immediately.
Very fast.
Yep.
How long does it take you to let it go? Why can we not let go of a negative feeling as quickly as we can take it on? You can. It's just as easy to let go of it as it is to get it. Really and truly. So these negative charges and positive charges, the two sides of the same coin, they are the same coin. You are simply reframing it. How many times have you heard me say today, but, and I go, oh, and? Because that is a reframe. I'm reframing the words. Because it elicits a different picture in my in my internal mind. Okay? All right. So values elicitation. What else? Any other questions? Let's see if I missed anything really relevant. You're good? You're all brilliant? That's good. Do you want to hear what the words are for?
I have a question
Yeah, shoot.
before you move on to that. When you think about your negative charges,
Yeah.
do you counterbalance it with a positive charge that you get, or do you? In my head, I'm just thinking about spitting out a bunch of negative charges and then spitting out a bunch of positive charges.
But that's, okay, so here's the thing. I can sit here and say that I don't want to be incompetent. And that's what drives me forward. But then I get to a certain point where I'm competent, and I know the charge isn't about the feeling so much as it is about what's motivating you. And I'm very motivated to not fail.
So how do you change the charge then?
You do the mental and emotional release.
Okay.
So I do the mental and, so I'll tell you a funny story. We're on tape, so I don't know if we should share this part. I'll step out. No. So I did this mental and emotional release. Don't get me wrong, like this is pretty high-end training, right? And I come out and it's a practitioner doing it with me, and the girl who did it for me, you know, I didn't know her, and I kind of came out and I went to my room and I'm like, that didn't work at all. That was terrible. Oh my God, I was so irritated. I was really irritated. I was like, oh, I did all this, it doesn't work, I'm defective, something's wrong. And my roommate, who is a life coach, she's like, okay, all right, you just enjoy that little hissy fit you're having there. And so that night I went out with a bunch of people, and I had 2 drinks. I had 2 drinks, that was it. And I was violently ill that night. Sorry to share that with you, but there's a reason why. I was violently ill that night. And the next morning, my roommate looks at me, and I woke up and I was like the Energizer bunny. I was raring to go. You think I'm raring to go now? You should have seen me that day. And I walked downstairs and a whole bunch of people went, what happened to you? And I'm like, don't know, this feels awesome, great. And I go into this room of 120 people learning this class, and Dr. Matt gets up there and he's like, so how does everybody feel today? And everybody's like, oh, you know, mixed reviews. So the feelings that you let go of anger, fear, guilt, anxiety. For some reason, the fifth one is escaping me. But for me, a huge one was sadness and guilt. Right, that's my negative charge. That's the source of my negative charge, is sadness and guilt. And I didn't know this at the time. And Dr. Matt says, okay, so for those of you who were very charged towards fear and anxiety, you're going to feel very today. Like all the hot air has been kind of, right? Because fear, you're like this, and you're like, oh my God, I gotta go. Whereas those of you who've let go of guilt and sadness, you're gonna feel like the Energizer Bunny. And my roommate, who's sitting about 4 seats over, she looks over and she goes, that's you. So I go to one of the ladies there, and she had said something to me really funny. She had said to me, you need to be prepared that as you release these emotions, and trust me, it's non-intrusive at all. They don't ask you to recollect anything or anything, nothing like that. It literally took 12 minutes, okay? She says, as you release these negative emotions, she goes, I'm just gonna warn you, you're gonna go to the washroom a lot, because you physically manifest a release as well. I thought she was full of hooey. So I go up to her the next morning, and she says, how are you? I'm like, oh my God, I'm the Energizer Bunny. I let go of guilt, and I let go of sadness, and I feel absolutely awesome, but man, was I ever sick last night? She goes, there you go. I was like, what? She goes, that's toxin. I was like, come on. But I felt amazing. Like, I literally thought I was gonna wake up in bed. I felt incredible. It's amazing how they manifest. If ever, Google the thing about the snowflakes. What negative emotions and negative charges do to the creation, to the component of water. Your body is 76% water. So if you have negative internal programming, all the work that you do, all the work on the treadmill, all the positive affirmations and everything else, all it's doing is managing it. It's not changing it. That's why I took NLP. So all the work in the world I can do, so my goal was to be the top producing individual agent in my office. My goal was to sell an apartment building. All the work in the world is not going to make a difference if my internal programming tells me that I can't. It's just not. So I wanted to change it. And through doing that, I discovered this idea of AIM. And I was like, wow, that's who I want to be. That's why I teach. This is my favorite thing to do. If I could get paid to do this, I would do it permanently. Because this is the epitome, like I can feel the energy in a room. And it's not because the energy is directed at me, it's actually because I can feel the energy getting captured in the room, and it's just crack for me. It's crack. So, anyway, okay, so flexibility around questions, yeah.
Just the context of you feeling the energy in a space. So if you are at a listing presentation and you feel like the energy is negative, how do you
I just had this discussion with my coach.
shift that?
I did a listing presentation last week, and literally it just went, it went. Here's the thing, it's my energy that's doing it. Again, take responsibility for your environment. So, full disclosure, I rock buyers. I am literally, like I absolutely rock them. Listings I'm not as experienced with them, and my programming is really poor around it. So along with my mental and emotional release, every morning I listen to a tape recording that's about 5 minutes of my limiting belief that I can't do listings, and I'm getting rid of that limiting belief. Because my programming, like I'm a big personality, that's not good for everybody. So I've heard this programming through my entire life. Quieten down. You're very intense. And that is now manifesting itself in my listings. And I'm not me. So I do work around a limiting belief, around that it's okay to be me, and people will like it. So it's getting better, but it's a work in progress. Is that fair?
Fair.
But if the energy plops in the room, it tends to be because I've allowed it. That's me. Okay?
Oprah says to be responsible for the energy that you bring to the space.
Absolutely. Again, brilliance.
She's brilliant.
Brilliance. That's what I want. That's what I want in my life. That's what I want in my children's life. That's what I want to surround the people I care about with. Okay? So, okay, so now it's gonna get really personal. So one of the things for me was my son was very sick when he was little. Very, very sick. I was told my son was not gonna live the night. A lot of people don't know that.
Whoa.
He was in a hospital for 4 months. He had an undiagnosed brain tumor with very serious hydrocephalus. I took him into Sick Kids Hospital not knowing what was going on. Scariest thing in my life. Would not wish upon my worst enemy. But if you ask me about it, I smile. And it was the most empowering thing in my life. Because that's the way I chose to handle it. Does that make sense to you guys? Right? I did get a tattoo for that one. I did, because he went back in for surgery again and I forgot the lesson I learned. And I was nagging my kids again and I was snappy with them and everything else and I wasn't being the person I meant to be. I lost track of the value of just being thankful that every day your children are a miracle. Don't get me wrong, he drives me crazy. I can strangle him pretty much daily. And I would not wish that upon anybody else. Except, and here's the thing, the kids who recovered the best were the parents who took that attitude. Really and truly. Horrible thing, would not wish it upon a soul. I really wouldn't. But man, am I ever glad it happened in a sick, kind of twisted way, because that's the way I've chosen to reframe it. Same with your clients who are moving. That's a really horrible thing. I'm giving up my house that's 52 years and everything else. You reframe it. But in terms of your aim and your big why, let's get back to that, right? This is all about your internal programming. So find out what truly makes your insides burn and tick, right? And your Tesla or your trophy, they're simply representations of it. That's all they are. Find out who you really want to be. I want to be a great dad. Well, what does being a great dad mean to you? It means I'm surrounded by love. It means I'm, I want to be the best agent out there. I want to be top. I want to have my own TV show, my own book deal. What does that mean to you? Those are checklist items. Okay? Any other questions? I love teaching this class because I truly think it can be transformative. I really do. Okay, so NLP, it's really complex. It's a lot more. Like I said, I haven't touched a McFlurry in 2 years. That's saying something. I really I did find a way around it. I discovered that I could eat a soft dipped ice cream cone. Just not a McFlurry.
Is that,
It's different.
That's like the same sort of thing they use for people that try and quit smoking?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You have to be, remember, you have to be ecological about it though, right? So you have somebody, you can change somebody's programming to help them quit smoking, and yet we cannot deny the fact that there are certain physical repercussions of doing that. Right? So is it ecological to have somebody who's smoked for 50 years go cold turkey? Probably not. Okay. One thing I do want you to remember though, the subconscious mind does not process negatives. So, I don't want to be bottom producer in my office. What does your subconscious mind hear?
Bottom producer.
And that's what it will manifest. I don't want to be chubby anymore. What will you do?
Chubby.
I don't want to be poor.
I don't want to be poor. Poor. So again, that bold law, what we focus on expands. That is all to do with your programming, guys. All it is. Not rocket science. Yeah?
That's why you tell your child to hold the glass straight instead of don't spill it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, the negatives.
Yeah, so negatives, your unconscious mind. So again, I walk into Mark's room. I'm going to sell an apartment building. What does my subconscious mind pick up on?
Sell an apartment building.
Right, so you know why, and I get asked all the time, how did you sell an apartment building? Like you're a year in production and you sold your first apartment building to a 20-year-old, by the way. Right? How did I sell it? I sold it because my subconscious mind was looking for the opportunities, even if I didn't know it. Absolutely. You are going to see the things that your subconscious mind is prepared. You and I could walk in the same room. You and I could walk in the same room. Okay, so you do luxury, right? Yeah, that's not in my programming. It's gonna be, because I'm going there. Watch out, ladies. Yeah. But it's not in my programming, so I don't see the opportunity. I really appreciate you having me here today. Any questions? I didn't make anybody cry today. That's good. Poor Lindsay Russell out here. Yes, in the back.
When you are doing a mental and emotional state, and
Yeah.
you're talking to, say, a couple, while inside their, as you feel it, or as they feel it, their perfect place,
Right.
are you utilizing a switch pattern?
No. So I would never do a mental and emotional release on a couple, first of all.
Okay,
I would never do it on somebody who was not aware that I was doing it. I would ask their permission first.
okay.
Okay? That's more of a sales technique. I just happen to know because of my training that people see things in pictures. So I tend to elicit pictures when I talk to people more often than I do anything else. So again, you know, a common thing, logic makes you think, emotion makes you act. So I focus on the values and the underlying emotions of something to help somebody make a decision. I can sit there, listen, I'm an extremely technical person, but I'm not a high C. That's why I sell apartments. I love the complexity of the deals. I do, I love the intricacies. You put me in a 100-year-old house, my inspectors barely need to even come in. Because I know every single detail about those houses. I like to be competent. So I have to know everything about something, right? Except if I sit and spew that at a buyer, they're gonna run out the door. I'm gonna terrify the pants off of them because they're not going to make a logical decision. They're not. I had a couple recently, they were moving from Toronto to Hamilton, which is happening a lot, you guys, just saying. Young couple moving from Toronto to Hamilton, they did an inspection, one of the better inspections I've ever had. I've never heard of an inspection where the grading is actually okay, and this one was okay. And the next day they called me up and they're like, we can't do it. And I made the heinous error, I went logical. What do you think you can't do it? I didn't say what you mean you can't do it, but I gave them all the reasons that they should. And I never asked them how they were feeling about it, and I lost them in that moment. And the energy went. So I called Alicia, I'm like, oh my God, this deal's going sideways.
They bought a new house 2 days later.
They
Like,
bought a
she
new house 2
burns
days
the
later.
buyers like I've never seen.
But here's the thing, I acknowledged, I came home and I thought about it. And I realized I wasn't being the person that I wanted to be. I work really well with buyers because of my energy. Because they feel that. That's why I do really well with buyers. And here I was doing exactly the opposite because I got an away from charge. So I owned it. I owned it. And I went out with these buyers, and before that I showed them the next house, I stopped them in the front. I said, listen, I need to apologize to you. And they're like, what? And I said, I need to apologize to you. Because you were worried about that house. And I wasn't listening. I was talking to you about the bones of the house. And that wasn't what it was. I should have been talking to you about how you felt about that house. You should have seen them. Their whole physiology changed. Their shoulders dropped. I screw up all the time too. I took this class because I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Right? But their physiology changed. Their shoulders dropped and they were like, oh.
Now she understands.
And the next house, they went in firm. Bought it. And they love me.
And they released.
Well, I did. I released. I released this energy of, oh my God, like I've screwed up as a buyer's agent, they're not gonna buy this house, I haven't handled it properly, and I released it. And as soon as I released it, I changed my charge from negative to positive. I'm no longer running away from them not taking that house, I'm gonna run towards them actually buying a house. But I dealt with their, more importantly, I dealt with their logic and I didn't deal with their emotion. And it is the emotion that's gonna drive them, okay? And that is why you need to have an aim and not just a goal. Because your aim is the emotional things that motivate you to be the best version of yourself. And that's all I want for all of you in this room. Sound good? Boom. The end.
Oh, we appreciate you coming, Irene.
Oh my goodness.
There's something in here for you, and something for your son. We support